Now, why do you think the people behind this, and by people behind this, I don't mean individuals who experience gender dysphoria and are wrestling with this, but rather the kind of the masterminds or people doing this ideological colonization, trying to shift
Hmm.
even developing nations that don't hold these
Yeah.
values and trying to impose this in the school systems to the
Hmm.
children. Like, what's the end game? Like, why do they feel a need to redefine human nature? And in the terms, like I identify as non-binary, it almost sounds just liberating. Like I'm not
Yeah.
going to be restricted by your arbitrary norms of who you say I have to be. I've burst those asunder and I'm free from them. So it has this sense
Yeah.
of freedom and liberation and a lack of constraints to be who you truly are. And like, what's
Mhm.
the end game behind all this? Like, why the need to redefine human nature?
Well, I'm going to say two things. The first is this: is that the human person and human nature, as it's made in the image and likeness of God, is imprinted with mystery. In the same way that we're made in the image and likeness of a God who, even though He's revealed Himself, He's a mystery. There's things that are beyond our comprehension. The human person is exactly that same type of mystery, analogously in the flesh. And so when we're in front of like the tension that we discover in this world where we're living after the fall, we're living in the midst of brokenness, and we're living with the tension of like, I can't fully control a mystery. And if I can't fully control a mystery and I don't trust that there's a God that does, then I need to do something to either what they would call you sort of reduce it. So the reduction, tear it down from where it's at. It's not a mystery. You're just matter. You're just atoms. Or that your body has no meaning. So there's this inability to deal with mystery. The further we move away from God as a culture, the less we're able to understand the mystery of our humanity. And when you can't understand it, the only thing you can do is sort of decimate it, whitewash it, reduce it. And so that's this process that's going on of trying to like, say, well, there is no real meaning. There is no real like man, woman. And in fact, there's all this injustice that exists because of all these differences. So let's get rid of the differences so we can have justice.
Yeah.
And that's the fruit of a world that doesn't know the mystery of a God who is three distinct persons who are absolutely one. Without the mystery of the Trinity, how could we understand how two distinct ways of being human, man and woman, could possibly be one, could be in harmony, in unity, and not in conflict and competition? So that's one thing. The other is, and this is Benedict the 16th, guess what? The same problem in the garden is still going on today. And that's the problem of humanity saying, I'm not going to serve. I will not allow God to be God and myself to be a creature before him. Pope Benedict XVI said that we live in the age of the sin against God as the creator. And this is kind of part of the fruit of the negative side of the scientific revolution of modernity, where we set out to conquer the material universe, to know it and measure it and figure out how it all functions. And science is amazing at telling you all of that information, but science cannot tell you how to explain the mystery of the scientist. And and because of that, it's trying to reduce the scientist to just be like everything else. There's no meaning in the world. There's just function. There's ways of operating. And those are the laws, but there's no meaning. And what is a meaning? Meaning is connected with your destiny. And if we have no destiny and we have no meaning, well, then guess what? That leaves us in a position where we need to create it. So if there's no creator who lovingly made us in his image and likeness, I need to create myself. And a world that has idolized freedom looks at that sort of project of self-creation and self-fulfillment as the greatest act of my autonomy and my freedom. But we're impoverished because we think freedom is like no one can tell me you can't do something, as opposed to freedom is my capacity to know what is truly good and choose that and live that in my life. So those two things of like fleeing from the mystery by reducing humanity is part of the reason why this machine is unfolding. And the other is just the hubris, the pride of humanity. I will not be a creature before the creator. I'm going to be my own God. Sadly, the fallout is if you're raised in a situation where you're told that, you've got this great freedom, you don't have any meaning until you choose it. You don't have any identity until you choose it. Creates this anxiety in young people and this pressure and a sense of homelessness, and a sense of a lack of belonging, and a sense of a lack of purpose. And underneath the very different ways perhaps that it shows up, it's that same problem. It's being unhinged from the truth that we've been made in love by our good and gracious Father in order to stand in relationship to him as his beloved children in Christ.
Now, there's so much to dive into. There's so much good stuff, and it makes me think of the individuals that I've met who wrestle with gender dysphoria. Typically, there's a lot of anxiety going on in their life in general, and especially in adolescence, it is so rife with. It's just tumultuous. It's a roller coaster. Hormonally, emotionally, socially, relationally, within the family. Everything is in such a period of flux, and if you have a culture telling you, well, you've got to figure out, which of this laundry list of genders you are, and they're watching the YouTube stuff and this and that and these different people, and they're, okay, well, what am I? Well, I did feel that, and sometimes I don't feel like I conform perfectly to this stereotype, and they're sent on this unnecessary quest. When right in front of them is their body, which is meaningful, and they're told, yeah, don't look at that. Don't be distracted by the body. You need to go deeper than that. You need to go find something within, and they get sent out on this quest that's overwhelming.